Well, it's fantastic to be chatting. We're off. How are you, sir?
It is so great to be here. I am thrilled to be talking about our little movie that can, and to be talking. We're on like other sides of the universe.
Yeah.
I'm in Minnesota, America.
And I'm in
The day
Melbourne, Australia.
Melbourne, where the M and the M, where the Minnesota to the Melbourne meet.
I love
That's
M&M's. It's great.
Me too.
Like I was about to say, this is the type of movie that my wife and I watch on a Saturday night. Like we love this kind of stuff, really enjoy it. What attracted you to this project?
Um, a couple of things. One was my producing partner Betsy Sullinger gave me the book,
Yep.
and she was a massive Taylor Jenkins Reid fan, and I started reading it, and I kind of got really overwhelmed by. I just love the story, but on a personal level, maybe more than anything, my my grandfather, my mom, and my grandmother and my grandfather were married forever. When he passed away, she never dated anyone. She had one true love. And when I was 16, my father passed away. And my mom never dated anyone until I was literally finishing college. And it was the type of thing where she just kept going on, and then she still didn't want to date anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And when she turned 70, she met a man. And she just constantly said, well, I could never date anyone. I love your father. And that's how she grew up with her mom and grandfather. And one day they went on a date, and then another date, then another date. And she called us. I have three older brothers. And she said, Richard just asked me to marry him. And we were all kind of like, is that
Yeah.
possible? And even though you want your mom and dad to be happy, you're like, it just felt weird. And she kept telling us it doesn't take away from my love for your father. And Richard, my stepfather, who passed away not too long ago, he took my mom to my father's graveside, and he essentially asked my father for my mother's hand in marriage,
Oh my
and
gosh.
essentially said, I'll look after her. And to his word, he did. And it really connected with me that you can have more than one true love. You
Mm.
can, and that their love can happen. We all, it's such a universal language, right? Is it that first love you have when you're a kid? Is it that love that got away? Is it however you are, wherever you are in life, all of a sudden you spark?
Mm.
And that struck me as being something worth pursuing. And like you and your wife and so many people I know, including my wife, like those are the type of movies on a Saturday night we want to grab a blanket and
Yep.
watch or go see on date night. Uh and so I just love the opportunity to tell that story. And every time we would talk to people on set, cast and crew, about their story, everyone had a story.
Yeah.
Everybody had a story about that one true love or love. So it was an easy one to say yes to.
Well, I can tell you, your mother's story gave me goosebumps. Like that was
Okay.
incredible.
Yeah.
But also like this also puts a question to husbands and wives when they're watching it. What would you do? And I'm like, oh no, don't
I
ask me that.
we constantly we I think my wife lovingly would say, well, if Luke Bracey knocks on the door,
Yes.
we have a conversation maybe we need to have. And I'd be like, okay, all right, I respectfully will stand. If Luke Bracey knocks on the door and says, honey, I'm home, I've been away for a while, I get it. I have to respect that.
Yep, yep. As you mentioned, the story is adapted from the book of the same name.
Yeah.
I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that maybe Taylor Jenkins Reid was inspired by the final act of Castaway, because that's that when I watch Castaway, that's the stuff that really tugs at my heartstrings the most. And I love
Yeah,
that. I love that this movie kind of takes that concept and really
yeah,
runs
I
with it.
think, Taylor, she set this in the town of Acton, which is the actual town she grew up in.
Mm,
And so there were a lot of personal connections with her. And then her husband, wonderful writer Alex, helped adapt the book for the movie. And so I think they were inspired by so many things, the bookstore she grew up going to and all of that. And she and Alex were just, that was also the dream of like, sometimes you get a book and you're not with the novelist who wrote it, and you're making changes and you're hoping the fans will be okay with those changes. Here we had the creator of the book making whatever changes that were happening to the characters. And that just made it a lot of fun. But we talked about Castaway all the time, and we talk about certainly the ending of Castaway that kind of sticks with you. Again, those what if type scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. And that made the film all the more powerful for me, because I always left Castaway feeling a little bit unresolved, I guess it would be.
Yeah.
But you've put together a fantastic cast, and I had only known Philippa from Hamilton. Didn't know anything else she'd done, but she was amazing, and she really conveys the struggle and the confliction perfectly. So
I think it all came down to that character, because we started, you have, a three-hander, but if she's not the one, it's hard to follow the film. And during pandemic, the wonderful casting director, Sarah Finn, who's done, I think, every Marvel movie, every Marvel television show. And she also did, as we were talking earlier, She's the Man.
Yeah.
And I met with actress after actress, brilliant actors, like really was inspired with the amount of response that people had to the material. And I knew Philippa from Hamilton, and I knew her from the musical Amelie. And it was time to have a meeting with her. And I remember getting off that call, that Zoom, and emailing everyone saying, I just talked to her. I found her. and then getting Simu and Luke happened so quickly, because we just knew who we were building off of. And I think that's the most important thing. And sets can be great places to go to work every day. They can be challenging. We were in the middle of COVID, which already has its challenges, but what a joy every day to go to work with that cast and all of them talking about their relationships and stuff. But I think casting was crucial, and we had such an amazing supporting cast that, again, every day we'd pop in on set and you'd think, this is a good day. Today's a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that it was like a bit of a three-hander, but it was more of a four-hander, because Philippa plays two characters essentially. Like, it's the juxtaposition is amazing.
Oh, you win, Glenn. I'm sending you a check, because I have said there were two movies happening.
Yeah.
Because there are two love stories happening, and it's unfair. There was no villain in this movie.
No.
Time, if anything, is the villain. But, when we look back and, days where Pippa had to be dealing with Simu, there were days Pippa had to be dealing with Luke, and you can't deny what that relationship was, and you can't deny that love. And we always hoped that the audience would go back and forth wondering which one she should choose. And I would say, if we stop filming today, that would answer the question, because we're just stopping on this scene, but we'll tell a little bit more. But it definitely, I think, as an actress, she's so strong that she had to turn those tables each time. And like a movie, you're filming so out of sequence that the only thing that we knew we needed to do was Luke was coming off filming something previous, and I asked him not to shave so we could get the island look. So we needed to do all of his beard look. And he was anxious to shave and ready to shave. But even when he shaved and he comes out, and we sort of gave him a beauty shot in slow-mo. And even Pippa was like, oh, okay. That is the guy I used to be married to. It was every day. And, you really need a strong actor to be able to do that and make it believable.
He continues to blow my mind. He's a bit of a chameleon, this guy. Like, I saw him recently in a film down here called Mercy Road, and he was phenomenal. Then I revisited Lucky Day last week, and I forgot how great he was in that. He can do anything, and I was wondering, he's a very laid back kind of guy. I'm assuming most Aussies are, but he has a very thick Aussie accent. Did he hold on to that between filming, or did he
No, he, and I want to concur with you. He could do anything. Like, that is an actor who, I knew him from Point Break. I knew him from all of these things, but
Yep.
all of a sudden, this kind of romantic, dramatic leading man. Um, and he really comes in ready to work and do the work. But once he got into character, he was sort of in character during the day, and
Yep.
then we spent a lot of time grabbing meals on weekends and stuff with everyone on location, and that would come out. When we first met, we started doing these Zooms with the cast, and we were doing page turns with our writers and producers, just everyone chiming in. And one morning I was in London doing a musical on the West End. Simu was in Toronto. Pippa was in New York. Luke was back home in Australia. Everybody and the writers were in LA. So the only time we could do it was like 2 a.m. in London, but it was about 5 a.m. in Australia.
I know how that is.
And right? So we're doing that moment, 5 a.m. in Australia, and we're all on Zoom and we're all getting ready to know each other. And Simu, who's out there promoting Shang-Chi at that time, he had this adorable, like, I think it was a little dog, and he's playing with it, and everybody's being cute. And Luke has an apple, and he's cutting an apple, but it's a Crocodile Dundee knife. I mean, it is a machete. And he's just slicing it. Like, all of a sudden, every male on the thing was like, I am not worthy. I don't know who I turned my card into, but and we were like, do you have a smaller knife? And that made him laugh. And he's like, no, I'm just cutting my apple.
So that's funny. Have a look at this. Like,
yeah.
I think that it must be an Australian thing. Like, we must just all carry knives.
No, I'd say his was twice that size. But it was like, we'd all be like a little like Swiss Army knife, or we'd have like a little but I think he really found that character. And interestingly enough, there were no moments where he and Sima were doing scenes together. So the scenes were all separate. So he would come to set to visit, or vice versa, but it was definitely Pippa was with one or Pippa was with the other, and you could just tell the energy on the set always changed by
yeah.
what you needed to focus on.
Oh, amazing. And Simu is like playing against character here. Like, it's a departure, let's say, from his Marvel stuff. Like, what's he like to work with? Because I think he had some of the funniest moments in this film. Not only the funniest, but the most heart-wrenching.
I think that was, always the concern was, would he feel like he was in a different movie? Yet the comedy is, unless you're making it that there was some, like, it's a thriller, or, it's a guy who, if you think about the reality, you're in love with somebody, you're getting ready to spend the rest of their life, and their husband that you thought was dead has returned. What option? There is no win, because if you say, well, forget him, that's over the rest of your life. And if you're like, well, technically he is your husband. So there's a moment where he says to her, essentially, she needs to make a decision. And it just destroys him, because he's such a good guy as a character, and Simu is but that's what we wrestled with the most, because Luke comes back and he's only thought about one thing, which is, when I left, I had a wife, and I had a life, and I'm just now returning, and the only thing that kept me alive was my wife. And even when she says to him early, like, there's somebody else, he kind of laughs, which was a great choice by Luke, because he's like, that's absurd. Okay, you didn't realize. I get it. So now put that away. And we're married. And so that became the challenge and likability. And what we really did was we used that classroom and the kids and the teachers, and we used it as sort of a platform of, it's just him telling his story and people rooting for him. But at the same time, what do? Do you just stand aside and wave and be like,
I'm not gonna throw any spoilers out there, but just to people listening, when they see this film, the classroom stuff is where I think a lot of the heart of this film is, because it's hilariously relatable. The stuff with the 3 dots on the phone, And just there's one particular scene, and my wife will attest to this. It cuts back to the classroom, and unexpectedly, suddenly he's got an audience in a pizza box, and I just burst out laughing. I thought that was the best moment.
It makes me very happy. Those are those inspired moments where you're all sitting around and you're like, I think we need pizza. I think that should be. And the more you get comfortable telling people, and again, it's just a heartfelt. Early on, there was a studio who wanted to buy the book, and we met with them, and they wanted to turn it into pretty much a thriller. Like they wanted it to be, he returns and you don't know if he's good. And we all sat in that meeting and we were like, what? Like, I get it. I get that movie. That's not this movie. So you really need to root. You need to root for him, and he doesn't have. He needs his friends to be.
And
able
Luke
to
left
talk.
his knife at home. He hasn't got that.
Luke left his knife at home, and there was always, every once in a while, we'd have a small moment of like, what if the two passed each other? There's always that great moment in I think in one of the like Saturday Night Fever or one of the movies where Travolta passes Stallone, maybe in Staying Alive, and it was that moment of recognition. So there was always like, what would happen if the two of them came together? But they knew each other as kids. And so using our young actors to convey the fact that Luke knew who he was, that doesn't change the current set of affairs.
Yes, absolutely. Look, I feel like I could just keep talking to you for hours, sir. But before we wrap up, firstly, I just want to touch on the supporting cast because Michael O'Keefe, like I would fanboy like there's no tomorrow if I was in his presence. Like, what was he like to work with?
Well, he is gracious enough to let me do what you wanted to do, Glenn, which was to fanboy. There was not a day didn't go by that I was like quoting Caddyshack and being like, also. And there was always that great Chris Farley on Saturday Night Live interviewing Paul, he'd be like, remember when you were in the Beatles? That was me with him. Great Santini. Like, he's so remarkably gracious and kind and really just took the father role to heart on the set. And so, but yeah, the first day I met with them, he had read the script and wanted to talk. And I'm like, don't embarrass yourself, Andy. Don't. And I'm like 8 seconds into it. And I'm like, Caddyshack was a real seminal.
The puppet gopher just comes up on the screen.
That's right. I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, hey, did I say too much?
Oh my goodness.
Lovely. And that whole cast, honestly, all of them, Tom Everett Scott, who I've worked with a lot, Michaela Conlon, who's ridiculously talented, Lauren Tom. We had a lot of scenes where we were all together in one house or the wedding, and those are just good people to be in business with because they're all lovely and they make going to work pleasant.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I enjoyed this thoroughly, but my final thing I need to say to you, and I know you're going to indulge me here, but one of my podcast co-hosts, which you can see in the background, Chloe, she gets embarrassed every time I drop her name in interviews. But one of her all-time favorite films, and I mean all-time, she talks about it endlessly, is Reefer Madness, the musical. I just wanted to get this soundbite of me telling you that just to make her blush.
Chloe, Chloe. If I was there right now with you, I would give you 420 high fives. I would tell you to toke up and always. And here's your Australian connection. I'll give you Australian connection. Alan Cumming was in Australia filming a movie when I talked to him about joining the cast of Reefer Madness, and we had to coordinate between them once again, America and Australia. And so from Australia, he said yes and brought all that energy with him. So thank you for watching
He was probably filming The Mask 2 or something, so he was like, yes, get me over there now.
You know what? He might have been. He's such a delight. But I do remember that was the thing where they're like, Alan Cumming wants to talk to you. I'm like, great. And they're like, he's in Australia. And I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, how does that work?
Yes. Oh my God, this has been one of the best chats ever. Thank you so much for making time.
Thanks. Look forward to talking to you again about anything else.
Oh mate, One True Loves, it really hit the spot, and people that love romantic comedies and dramas should all get out and see it. So thank you, mate.
Thank you. Check us out. Tell Chloe I said hey.
I will.
Ready?
Woo! Let's go!
Emma Blair. Want to get married?
Yes! Ladies and gentlemen, Jesse and Emma Lerner!
I can't just fly off to Alaska.
Okay, I'll call you when I land.
Hello?
Mrs. Lerner, your husband was on a helicopter that went down in the Pacific.
Jesse. At first, it was so hard to let go. I refused to admit you were gone. But then I started to think that the good days could be good weeks or good months. I'm finally ready to live again.
Emma?
Sam?
I guess you all know that I've been madly in love with Emma for a few years now. The family.
That's a family.
Hello?
Sweetheart, it's Jesse. I'm alive.
Can't wear that to reunite with your long-lost husband.
Emma! I swore if I ever made it back to you, I'd tell you how sorry I was for leaving.
I'm engaged.
What?
You and Jesse had this beautiful life together, and then we all thought he was dead. And you found love again with a great guy. No matter what you do, you're gonna break somebody's heart.
That was incredibly verbose, but accurate.
I just want her to love me more than she loves him. That was wildly inappropriate. I'm gonna stop.
No, man, for God's sakes, just keep talking.
Do you love him or not?
She should be with the person that she loves the most, not the person that loves her the most.
I can't lose him, Marie.
So don't. Go tell him.
Are we really not going to talk about your husband-in-law?
What?